All right. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Peace and Plenty in 20. I'm your host, Janine, transformational coach for midlife women. And I am very excited to introduce today's guest. Coach Dea is a dedicated advocate for women's empowerment and a skilled relationship coach, as well as a certified trauma healing facilitator, moderator, and speaker. As an award winning podcast host herself, she uses her platform to both inspire and guide others on their journeys to self discovery and resilient relationships. With a passion for helping women navigate life's changes, Coach Dea is committed to fostering empowerment and resilience in every aspect of her clients' lives. Welcome, Coach Dea. I'm so happy to have you here. From the first time I was introduced to you at the Bergen County Women's Networking event, I loved your energy. I felt the connection to the work that we both do, and I'm thrilled to have you on the show today. So, welcome.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for this great introduction. Yes, I remember that day very well. And it was interesting because it was a day that I was feeling extremely nervous. I'm not sure why. And I remember approaching the table that you're sitting with amongst other amazing women and felt that love and that support, and remembering one thing I learned that was so valuable on that day. I was feeling a bit chaotic on that day, right? But someone from the table, dear friend, now someone that I've worked with, Christine said, you are the most quiet, but the most powerful. And I understood in that moment, even in the moments that we're feeling maybe not ourselves, that we still hold the power to inspire and empower others. So that was such a beautiful gift
Such
that
a
I received
beautiful
on that
message.
day.
And the fact that you remember that, and I remember that too. I remember Christine also kind of being in awe of you. Um, and what a perfect message. Yes, in this month, I'm really kind of focusing on women and moms and how we can find that clarity and that, like what you just said, like even though you're feeling maybe nervous or not feeling quite yourself, how do we discover that calm, that clarity, that like knowing our truth and knowing everything's going to be okay while we're trying to juggle life around us? And I know you've had a lot of experience in these areas and you coach women around this too. So share with me what what are your secrets? What are your personal secrets for navigating this chaos?
Okay, so that's a great question. One of the things that I've come to realize, and it might have something to do with my age, so I just turned 60, right? And in the
Amazing.
season of being 60, I discovered that, one of the things that stopped me the most from being who I needed to be was that desire to be perfect. I wanted to please, I want to appear a certain way, when what I needed to be doing it was to look at myself and say, this is perfect, what I already am, what I already have, imperfect, right? It's perfect to be imperfect. It's okay not to be perfect. It's okay to show up, because when I learned the most from others, it was when I would notice that in their vulnerability, I took something out of that. In their perfection, I didn't. If something was too contrived or rehearsed, I didn't understand that. I didn't connect with that. What I connected with was when I was in relatedness, seeing someone else being in their lack or their fear or their chaos, and me saying, wow, I can see them. I can see myself in this, you see? And so I learned that my most powerful expression was when I was in emotional humility, saying, hey, this is where I am, this is who I am, and that's okay. I may not be perfect right now, but I'm feeling maybe not as powerful today, or maybe not as strong, or maybe not as organized. But you know what? I said these very words, and I did this before a very important interview that I was a part of. It was the interview with Mariel Hemingway, and I was like all chaotic that morning, disorganized. And I said, Dea, just say these words: I can function in chaos. And when I said that, I said, no matter what it is, it's going to be okay. And then getting into the interview, and there was a whole bunch of things going on their end as well, that humbled me. Like, hey, it's okay. Everybody's going through something. She was running late. There was this other thing we needed to do. And just feeling calm in the storm, calm in the chaos, is finding that space, because peace will matter most in these moments when it's not peaceful, when we feel that there is chaos around him, and then understanding the power that it holds, right? Because it's easy to be calm, to be centered in the uneventful, but it's more
Absolutely.
powerful to find that when it's not. So I just embrace that.
That line, I'm still running that line through my head that you just said. I can function in the chaos. And how powerful is that? Because, and transformational is that for a woman to think that way? Because what we often envision of high performing, high achieving, successful women is this idea of ultimate confidence, perfection, always having it all together. And what you're expressing too is like, you know what? That's actually not it. When you can be vulnerable and when you can show up in the madness and when things are not going well and you can speak your truth and share your emotions, that's where people connect with you, not necessarily the perfection. I mean, we may look at that and think that somebody has perfection, but I think it is so much more relatable and so much more inspiring to say, oh, wait, I can just be me and show up as me, and I can still be confident and still get clarity. My next question is, as a mom, as a, successful woman in business, how do you juggle all the things and how do you really step into, like, I love that idea of being able to function in the chaos, but like maybe what are the nitty-gritty things that you do to actually embrace that? Like share with our women, like, well, that sounds great, but how does she do that?
So one thing that I started saying many years ago is that you can do one thing every day towards a goal, right? We don't have to do 20 things. So that's one thing that I trained myself to do. Do at least one thing every day, even if that's one thing is today I will rest, or today I'll make a phone call. Tomorrow I will gather all the paper clips. I'll organize the papers. I decided if for those who have that option, I understand not everyone has the option of doing one thing. Some people need to do 20 things. But if you have that option, give yourself that gift. Do one thing. That's it. Okay. The other thing that I learned as a tool was because of my temperament and my personality, I need to take an hour at a time. I can't think of the whole day. It just overwhelms me. So I would say, okay, from 9 to 10, I need to get dressed, get ready. From 10 to 10 to 11, I will read something or I will prepare, I will write something or whatever. So I always say prepare, but don't over prepare. That's the third thing. Because I learned that by over preparing, you are also putting yourself in a box, in a script. And life is not scripted. Even in these interviews in a setting of question and answer, we are to show up and present ourselves exactly as we are. I'm not saying it doesn't take a certain preparation. I wouldn't go to, an event to speak in my pajamas, right? You dress appropriately. You do the steps that it takes to follow certain rules, but you don't over prepare because you also need to, in giving, you also need to be prepared to receive. If you go with an idea of how something's going to play out and pan out, you're not going to be open to receiving. I mean, there may be a question you didn't prepare to answer. And so how do you deal with that in the moment, right? Much like in life, being a mom and doing all the things, I learned one other thing too that was so powerful the day that I said, take the superwoman cape off. Because I was walking around with a superwoman cape and I did not like that. Not having all the answers, having to always, how do we do this? So you're the one always planning, preparing. One day I said, you know what? I'm not going to plan anything. How about when people ask me what I'm going to do? I'm like, I don't know. What do you think? Put it on others. Let the kids figure out what are we going to do today? I don't know. What would you like to do? Because I don't want to be always the one asking, answering, preparing, having all the answers. I want to, for once, not have to decide. We need to let ourselves be without having to always be the ones giving. I did a tape today on my content on Instagram, and it talked about serving versus helping, right? People who help don't always serve, but people who serve always help. And the difference between serving and helping is that in order to help fully in a way that we're serving others, we need to be resourced. And being resourced means that we're also taking good care of ourselves. That means you give yourself grace. You take care of yourself. You practice self-care, mindfulness, right? You practice taking care of you, taking care of your body, taking care of your being, your soul. When I say those words, I can function in chaos. Sometimes it's about giving yourself permission to fall. to be imperfect, to not show up with all the answers. That is a part of taking care of yourself. And I think when we can give ourselves this type of grace, we're so much more likely to be able to help someone fully, as opposed to, I'm this perfect person that you can call at 10 p.m. and I'm going to be on the phone with you for an hour. Meanwhile, I got to get up early the next day. Did I take care of myself? Was I resourced enough at the end of a long day to actually fully serve someone? No, it might have helped them in that moment, but that's not serving. Serving is the whole thing. It's the whole thing.
That is
So
such
how I do it, that's how I navigate it.
right. That is such an important distinction, though. Like that point, that's like the serving as opposed to just helping, and also allowing, especially those of us with children, teaching them to help themselves. Like you said, like I don't have to answer every question. I don't have to figure everything out. So, but I'm curious, Daya, like what led you to that moment where you said, you know what, I'm taking off the superwoman cape? Because I know so many women that would love to do that. So I'm curious, what happened? What was the catalyst? What drove you to that moment where you were like, you know what, I'm done?
That's a good question. For me personally, and I'm not saying everyone needs to go through that, right? So there were a couple of things. Um, as you know, as a relationship coach, I've been divorced twice, right? So my journey with relationships was extremely difficult over a span of 30 years, right? Because I was married 5 years the first time, then I was a single mom for 10 years, then I was married for almost 20 years, and now I'm divorced for almost 7 years, the second time. And so the journey for me was one that I hit bottom, right? It was depression, PTSD. And when I knew that, except for having that little bit of faith that was left in me, knowing that I was going to be okay, it was inner search. It was, I needed to find the answers. If you ever get to that point, and I'm not saying everybody needs to hit the same edge, but I think everyone hits a point when they start questioning, what am I doing here? What is this for? And how am I going to walk forward? Because, I stopped looking. I was living a life that I was constantly pointing to the things that had happened to me. Well, this happened to me and that happened to me. I wasn't paying attention to what was happening in me. But when I did that, I said, what am I going to do? How am I going to move forward from here? That moment of desire to heal, even though I didn't know how that journey was going to look like, is what led me to find the answers that I needed at the time. And the most important one of them was stop trying to be perfect. And I think when you hit that place, you realize, this is what you have. This is the life you have. This is it. What are you going to do? How are you going to live it? It's deciding. You decide that you want to walk in a different way. That moment doesn't come with clarity. Just so for those of you who are watching, it wasn't that I woke up and went, aha, today I'm going to heal, be better. I want to do this way, that way. I had no answers. I was under, literally under. And I started to pray about it and ask for help. And before I knew, there were books, there were podcasts, there were things. I couldn't afford a coach at the time. And then I found someone who would have worked with me. And I said, I can only pay for 30 days. And in those 30 days, I have to find a way. I have to find either some tools, call it, either new habits or new little things that I can do. And this is why when I implemented, do one thing every day towards your healing. One thing. It doesn't matter what it was. It could be listening to or meditating for 5 minutes for a while, or writing an affirmation. It was mostly about not a big plan. It was about the little things, small habits over time, small routines, small little things that you do over time really enhanced my experience in my healing journey. But my desire to heal came from, if I don't heal, if I don't get out of here, I'm not going to be here. As women, we have this superpower, right? This is why I think we're able to influence people in such a powerful way, because we have that intuition, and when you're about to break. Even after the whole journey of healing, and I did get there, after a few years of work, then I faced losing my life almost to COVID in 2021, right? That experience was it was one that took me by surprise. It was a major curveball. I was already in that place of living life from acceptance and gratitude and all of those things. And when I got sick and almost lost my life, that then sent me for another loop. And I said, God wants me to see more. What is it that I need to see here? Not, why, this happened to me, but why? What's the reason? There's something that I need to figure out here. That deepened my expression of self.
And so what I'm hearing from you are a few things. you always are at choice, and you made a choice.
Mhm.
You shifted your perspective. You leaned into faith, right? And you also kind of found your purpose. And I'm curious because I did an episode a few weeks ago, and some people, some listeners might be religious, but others might be spiritual. But I do want to touch on this because I think I share that I am both a religious, spiritual, very faithful person. So I think it's important to touch on that, if you would. How has your, and I know we didn't plan to talk about this, but as you and I talk, we have to trust our intuition and the vibe, right?
Absolutely.
I feel that without the faith in something greater than me, I wouldn't be able to do what I do. And I think that you feel the same. And if you wouldn't mind speaking to that for a moment.
Okay. So I believe that, the belief in a higher power sort of releases us into the space of being human. Sometimes if we hold on to everything that we do, we depend on ourselves, we're not going to excel in the way that was meant for us, right? I, for one, I am not as religious. I'm more of a person with a relationship with God. I believe that we can have relationships with a higher power, and it's different for everyone. All of the walks of faith are beautiful, in my opinion. Everyone, every culture has an expression. I think all of us have the extension of divinity in one way or another, right? To me, divinity is the bridge between our humanness and his divinity,
Yep.
right? His power. So for me, faith wasn't about finding answers. And I may be a little bit different than most people, right? Because a lot of people think of faith and prayer as ways, means by which they find the answers to what they're looking for. For me, it was a whole different experience. For me, faith was always not about seeking the answers, but about being prepared. Prepared to receive what was God's plan for me. So for me, faith is preparation. Faith is not a way that I use to find the answers or to find where I'm supposed to be doing. I think that even as women, we have an extension of that, is that as women, we're doing so many things. We wear so many hats.
Yes.
And it's almost like you can't be overly prepared. That's what I say, don't over prepare, because our job is to be malleable and to fit and mold into what's needed in the moment. Our job is to mediate, right? We're never going to be fully prepared. We know that as moms, right? You could have the diaper bag ready. I remember when I was younger, my diaper bag was perfect. I would have 2, 3 outfits, but my baby would poop 7
Of
times
course.
when I didn't have enough diapers, but I had a whole bag of diapers and it still wasn't enough. Or planning a whole day and then the baby wakes up with a ear infection. I'll be like, come on, like it can never make it right. And these are small things, right? And then they get older and they're bigger things.
Right.
With women, our bodies are also changing, right? We have seasons of life, not just mentally, spiritually, but hormonally we're changing. I mean, I've been through so many of those phases. And then what fits now, for example, even as a coach, right? If I was a coach at 30 or 40, I'll be hustling, right? I'll be doing these things in a different type of almost like, oh, I'm going to try to get this, get that. As a coach at my age, at 60, I'm flowing.
Yeah.
I'm open. I know what I want. I know how I want to work. And so I don't struggle with that. I just know it's going to happen. You just sit in a platform of flow. And that is because I'm receiving. I know I have a purpose. And whatever it is that's aligned with me, aligned with God has for me, it's going to come to pass.
So
So it's a
beautiful.
whole different way of interacting. And not that any one of them is right or wrong. It's just what is within the season. And that is also very individual. Every person has to find what that means for themselves. Being imperfect for me is powerful. I found power in that. I found power in taking the superwoman cape off. I found power in surrender. So for me, it's about that faith and spirituality. Looking at a higher power is surrender. It's saying, okay, here I am, and this is whatever it is that God has for me, whatever is aligned with what God has for me is what I'm about to experience. Which brings me to one thing that I wanted to say, because I know a lot of us talk a lot about, boundaries, right? And that's another thing that changed for me as I got into this season of flowing with what the preparation is, the preparation to receive, right? Is understanding that boundaries wasn't something that I was going to use. I used to use boundaries to decide what would I allow people to do to me or for me. And I then understood the boundaries wasn't about the other people, it was about me. Boundaries was a set of, call it rules, habits, or things that aligned with what my purpose was. So instead of being something that would stop others, it was something that propelled me forward. For me, boundaries are rituals that we create for ourselves in order to have the things that are aligned with what we want to do to happen.
What a beautiful way to express it. And I agree with you that I don't love that idea of boundaries being like this. It sounds so hard, right? And it sounds like it has to be almost like aggressive and it's about stopping other people. Whereas, no, boundaries is about what you just said, surrendering, preparing, stepping into what your true purpose is so that you can serve, right? Not just help, like you said earlier, and to live a life of more ease. And Dea, I am relating so much to this because my word of the year for 2025 is surrender.
Oh, wow.
Because, like you said, especially being a mom and being a business owner there and just being a human, we have no idea what tomorrow is going to bring. So we have to surrender. But if we can just prepare to the best of our ability, be imperfect, be human, show up as our best selves, the ease that comes with that. And the way, like you were talking about hustling as a coach, and when I started as a coach 5 years ago, same thing. I feel that that hustle culture worked against me. Whereas now, when I can surrender and I can say, okay, I'm going to show up every day and connect with people that I align with and just and take and be prepared. This is what I love what you said. Be prepared, but also take it hour by hour, day by day. Do one thing, release that superwoman cape. I just feel that that is the way to clarity through the chaos. Everything you just said. I have a feeling this is going to be a two-parter because there's so much, like there's so much that we just unpacked. And I feel like we're on the same page in terms of what women need, giving themselves that permission, right? Setting perimeters. And again, I don't use the word boundaries. I use the word perimeters. And it's more about, not about shutting other people out. It's actually more what, to your point, it's actually more about opening your heart to yourself and saying, what do I need to make the space for? And then those boundaries or those perimeters kind of naturally happen because you're going to say, this is what I need for me, right? And then stepping into your power, knowing your purpose. And I also loved the way when I said to you, like in terms of structuring your days, you're saying like, let's just focus on one thing I have to do at a time. Let me just prepare, but not over prepare and expect my day to be perfect. Because I am one of those people that used to do the calendar and I need to do boom, 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 boom at this time, this time, this time. And if it didn't happen, then you get down on yourself. And that's not what we need. We need the opposite of that. We need to say, here's this one thing. Here's how I'm planning my day is going to go. If I need to roll with the punches and be imperfect, I'm going to do that. And I think that that's such an important message for women to hear rolling into September. So again, Dea, thank you for taking this time to talk with me and to share with so many women what I know is going to be a very inspirational episode.